WrestleMania VIII, live from the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana. World Wrestling Federation Champion Ric Flair is challenged by Randy Macho Man Savage. The tyrannical Jake the Snake Roberts goes one-on-one with the immortal Hulk Hogan. It's a double main event live at WrestleMania.
Hey guys, it's Steve from Mantis here. You're listening to the Good Friends Better Enemies podcast, only on the Counted Out 7 YouTube channel. Jay, let's go!
Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of the Good Friends Better Enemies podcast. My name is Jay, and I'm joined as always by Tyrone. And Tyrone, welcome to our multiverses version of WrestleMania season. How you doing, buddy?
All things considering, I am fine. I mean, we are about to deal with the really tough task of rebooking some really god-awful WrestleManias before we get into anything good. So we're starting it off with WrestleMania VIII this week, and I mean, it was a absolute garbage pay-per-view. So I don't think that you could do any worse. I'm hoping you couldn't at least, but you've done some real doofus bookings in the past. So I'm kind of worried about what you're going to be doing here, but let's go, man.
Yes, sir. Well, as aforementioned, we are booking WrestleMania VIII, which took place in Indianapolis, Indiana at the Hoosier Dome. Now, for those of you that are new to the podcast or need a little refresher, Tyrone's going to quickly walk you through exactly how we got to this particular WrestleMania. We are also this week going to forego our talking about current day product. We'll probably talk a little bit more about WrestleMania closer to the time. But for the purposes of today, we have spent weeks and months building up to this particular event. We've done some long-term booking going all the way back to Survivor Series and beyond that. So I think it's important that we just quickly give people a crash course, Cole's notes in terms of how we got here. What do you think, Tyrone?
Ooh, yeah, why not? I mean, why not? Most people who listen to this, I'm sure, know exactly what we did, Jay, but let's appease you, okay? Because that's what we do on this show. So we started all of this back at back at Survivor Series 1991, planting a few seeds here and there. Nothing crazy. There was still Jake the Snake as a heel, but he wasn't exactly in the main event at this point. We go into Tuesday in Texas, and we have The Undertaker defeating Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship after Jake the Snake interferes. He doesn't really touch anybody, but it's just him staring down Hulk Hogan, doing what Jake does best, which is mind games. We also had Roddy Piper and Ric Flair going at it then. It ended in a no contest, which would lead us down the line to a different pay-per-view that we like to call the Royal Rumble. So when Jay rebooked the Royal Rumble 1992, he started us off with a big tag team match where you had Hogan and Savage reuniting as the Mega Powers going up against Jake and The Undertaker. During this one, we really started to plant some seeds there, hoping that we get to a main event or at least a marquee match with Hulk Hogan and Jake the Snake Roberts. We started it at the Tuesday in Texas. Actually, no, we started at Survivor Series, went to the Tuesday in Texas. Here we are at the Royal Rumble, still happening. We like to do this thing called longer term booking. That isn't always a thing in these days, but if you are a fan of the product back in the early 90s like we are, it could take a year sometimes for a match to actually happen, or it could take 4 years in the case of Tito Santana and Rick Martel, and nobody even cared anymore. But also at the Rumble, we had Flair and Piper again, with Roddy Piper actually going over in a non-title match. We had the Intercontinental title on the line where the Mountie defeated Bret Hart. We also had the Rumble match itself, where Ric Flair did come out as the WWF champion. So going into WrestleMania, we also went into the Saturday night's main event from February the 8th, 1992. where we had Roddy Piper beat the Mountie for the Intercontinental Championship, hopefully setting up a great one-on-one or triple threat. I don't know what Jay has booked for this event, so we're going to find out shortly. We also got confirmation that Jake the Snake Roberts and Hulk Hogan would be going at it at WrestleMania. We found that out on the Saturday night's main event. We also had the Nasty Boys kind of cause the Legion of Doom a match against the Beverly Brothers, which I'm hoping led to the Beverly Brothers as the number one contender. But again, I'm sure due to Mr. Doofus over there, we don't get that as much as I wanted it. This is going to be my word of the day today. I hope you know that. We also have Savage challenging Ric Flair for the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 8, but kept getting interrupted by other top superstars such as The Undertaker, Sid Justice, and Ted DiBiase, all vying for a shot at that championship, which brings us to today's event, WrestleMania 8 from Indianapolis, Indiana, at the Hoosier Dome. I feel one of these days, Jay, when we do a WrestleMania or something like that, we're actually going to change the venue, too, to make it a little bit more interesting. Like, I don't know about you, but when I think of WrestleMania, I don't really think the Hartford Civic Center. So maybe that's one thing to keep in mind. But with that being said, we are caught up. We are exactly where we need to be. It is time for Jay to get in this goddamn driver's seat. We are live, pals. It is WrestleMania. Let's fucking go.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much for that very succinct explanation as to how we arrived at this fateful day in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm really excited to get into this, man. So why don't we just go into our usual routine, get our skis shined up, grab a stick of juicy fruit, and you can go ahead and tell me what the opening contest was for WrestleMania 8.
Okay, well, starting us off on this lovely April 5th afternoon, because that's when WrestleManias took place back then, kids. It was a daytime show, and like I said before, I missed that. Did you include the dark match, Jay, or not?
The dark match is not included.
All right, then opening us up was a one-on-one contest between the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, and El Matador, Tito Santana. What do we have in place?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is remind everybody that Reba McEntire was there to sing the national anthem on this particular installment of WrestleMania, which has been kept in. And actually, this match is staying the same. Shawn Michaels versus El Matador, Tito Santana. I did go back and forth on this, but having gone back to watch the match, it was quite a really well-worked opening contest. And I think it made sense for Shawn to go over here. And I also just love the idea of Bobby Heenan constantly referring to Reba McEntire as Reba McEntire. So I kind of have a soft spot for this one, and I think it needs to stay.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not think that you would keep the America the Beautiful singer in there, but just for the Reba lines, I understand what you did. I love it. I'm not gonna play dumb at any way, shape, or form here. I actually am a pretty big Reba McEntire fan. I probably listen to Fancy at least once a week while I'm at work, belting it out, singing along. So I am loving the fact that she is still involved in this. Yeah, it makes sense. It's a nice opener. You put the shine on that young upstart, Shawn Michaels, who had already been in the company for 4 years at this point. But makes sense. They're pushing him as a single. Put him over against an established face such as Tito Santana, who is a former two-time Intercontinental Champion, former tag team champion. Yeah, give Shawn the rub. I'm totally okay with this.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And I have to say as well that, again, going back and watching this match, I watched it yesterday morning while I was rebooking this card. And it's just a really well-worked match. It's a great way to get the crowd into it. And I just thought that, it was a hot start to Mania. I felt like it was something that people wanted to see. You have to remember that Shawn had just come off that barbershop incident with Marty. So, it makes sense for Shawn to open up this pay-per-view, and it's kind of coming out party for him. This WrestleMania really, to me, is almost the final WrestleMania of the old guard. This is the Federation year's final offering of WrestleMania. Then, of course, 9, we have the transitional WrestleMania where you have some of the Golden Age stars going up against some of the quote-unquote new generation. And then, of course, WrestleMania 10 is the blast off to the new generation era. So this has sort of a swan song element to it.
I've never thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. And even at 10, you had Savage on it, but he was kind of the lone one. It's kind of a weird. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, it is almost the passing of the torch. Um, I like it. I like that they didn't do Shawn versus Marty at WrestleMania 8. They really sold that injury angle because I feel like if it were fast forward even 10 years later, 5 to 10 years later, he'd get thrown through the window, be covered in glass, probably half dead, and then all of a sudden, a week or two later, he'd be miraculously back, showing up through the crowd or as a cameraman distracting, and then that's our Mania match.
Yeah, 100%. And if I'm not mistaken, Marty was, I don't know if he was injured at this point or if he'd been released. I think he might have been released at this point, and that's why they didn't do the match. I'm sure they would have had they had the opportunity to.
I always thought it was supposed to be at 9, Shawn and Marty, and then they just ended up doing that Shawn Tatanka match because Marty was released.
Oh, you might be right. Sometimes I get my years mixed up in terms of Marty's career. I can never remember when he was in, when he was out, whether he was injured, whether he was released. It's hard to remember with him sometimes.
Yeah, I don't really feel like talking about a lot of Marty Jannetty's personal life today. So what do we say we move on to the next match that I know doesn't exist?
That sounds good to me. Well, what do you have, pal?
Well, I have originally it was The Undertaker going one-on-one with Jake the Snake Roberts. So we know for a fact this one doesn't exist. So what do we have in its place?
The next contest on WrestleMania 8 is the Legion of Doom going one-on-one in a tag team match with, or I guess 2-on-2, with the Beverly Brothers.
Oh, okay. So all right, it's obviously non-title. It's just a tag team match at WrestleMania.
You got it, pal.
All right, I'm not mad at this. Anytime the Beverly Brothers can get onto a bigger card such as a WrestleMania, even if you're putting them in what I'm going to potentially assume is a squash match for LOD, they're still on the card. I'm okay with it.
All right, so following the events of Saturday night's main event, LOD is pissed off. In a rematch for the tag team championship, LOD is cost the match by Bo and Blake. It's a 4-on-2 as the Nasties and Beverlys do a number on LOD until the natural disasters make the save. It's a head scratcher until it's revealed that the Nasties have been ducking repeated closed-door challenges from Earthquake and Typhoon, leaving Jimmy Hart stuck in the middle. Meanwhile, LOD enlists the services of Paul Ellering to return as their manager. The first order of business is to eliminate the Beverly Brothers. At WrestleMania, the two teams would meet. The Beverlys claiming Animal and Hawk are the Legion of Sissies, which is actually something that they did in canon in the weeks and months following WrestleMania 8. So I stole and I borrowed from that. The match is a classic tale of cutting the ring in half. Hawk is taken to task by both Bo and Blake, and they take their turns dispensing a beating on Hawk. Finally, after 2 attempts to tag Animal, one of which was successful but not registered by a distracted official, Animal is tagged in and clears house. Power slams, a drop kick. A big-time clothesline sends Blake over the top rope. The Genius is on the apron when Ellering pulls him down and nails him with a hard right. Animal hoists Bo up, and Hawk lands the clothesline, executing the Doomsday device, easy for me to say. And your winners, the Legion of Doom.
I mean, no real surprise here. You kind of have to put the LOD over the Beverly Brothers. As much as I would have loved to see the other thing, I'm probably one out of maybe 50 people that would have wanted that. So yeah, LOD going over the Beverly Brothers. You're setting up the storyline. I do love the Legion of Sissies because it's such a stupid insult, but also so bad. Like, you're a big, hulking, jacked up, potentially juiced up monster of a man, and these guys are just like, you're a sissy. You're nothing but a sissy. I can see why that would piss off somebody like that. So yeah, let's go with it. I love it.
I think it's more of a kind of a dig or an insult in 92 than it is in 2002 or sorry, 2002 or 2022. So for those purposes, I think it needed to be sort of staying in there in terms of, you as you said, going up against these hulking individuals and calling them sissies. I think in 92 would have been like a real like burn.
I don't know. I feel like if you and I ever took a trip down to Venice Beach and walked along Muscle Beach, first of all, looking completely out of place, and we walked up to a couple of those guys and we're like, "You're just a sissy." we'd end up in the emergency room.
I think so too. I do agree with that. We'd be at the local medical facility quite quickly.
No premium live events for us for a little while after that.
That's exactly.
You ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
Well, up next, we have the Intercontinental Championship match with Bret the Hitman Hart going one-on-one against the champion, Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Next match on the card is The Undertaker going one-on-one with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase.
Okay, this is not in the slightest where I thought we were going with this at all. I like it, though, because there's kind of a built-in storyline there already. Walk me through how we got here.
So moments after the events of Saturday night's main event, World Wrestling Federation cameras shot exclusive footage of Ted DiBiase in conversation with Paul Bearer. The $1 Million Man attempts to bribe Bearer backstage into having The Undertaker rescind his claim as the #1 contender, and this was unsuccessful. The following week on Superstars, DiBiase would again confront Bearer, this time sweetening the offer with a briefcase loaded with stacks of money. When Paul Bearer again declines, DiBiase attacks Bearer, nailing him in the head with the Halliburton. The Undertaker is enraged when he finds an unconscious Paul Bearer left in a heap. At WrestleMania, the match is signed. The weeks leading to the match, Bearer is mysteriously absent, presumably from his injury. DiBiase enlists the likes of the Berserker, the Warlord, and IRS in an attempt to wear down the dead man before their encounter. Taker runs through all these challenges, accumulating victories along the way. DiBiase is content to allow others to soften up The Undertaker. At WrestleMania, Bearer returns to the dead man's side. This match is very well worked. DiBiase opens, throwing everything he has at Taker. Very little registers. Taker then gains the upper hand with throat thrusts and even a flying clothesline. A dazed DiBiase takes a powder and grabs Bearer by the lapels at ringside. Taker lurks behind him, swings DiBiase around, and nails him with a chokeslam on the floor. Taker then lifts a lifeless DiBiase into the ring and nails him with a tombstone piledriver. Your winner, The Undertaker.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling you were going to put Taker over because I think just like me, you want to try and keep that streak intact as long as we can. I don't hate this match at all. It's nice. You really, really get The Undertaker coming out as a fan favorite at this point, which is really kind of true as to what happened at Mania 8. He had just slightly turned into a fan favorite, really put him over the edge at WrestleMania when he beat Jake the Snake Roberts in canon. But now, with it being the $1 Million Man, again, a classic heel who the fans have loved to hate for the last 4 or 5 years, makes sense. My only question is Money Incorporated a thing at this point still, or is it still just DiBiase as DiBiase? Like you mentioned that he enlisted IRS and the Berserker. Are there still tag teams happening with him and IRS, or are we skipping that?
No, he's still affiliated with IRS, but for the purposes of this card, I don't have them in a tag team encounter. Obviously, I've kind of broken them up into singles matches, and I like the idea of them maybe forming a formal tag team after WrestleMania, and that offers fresh matchups, fresh challengers, fresh perspectives. I mean, you harken back to that SummerSlam 92 match with LOD versus Money Inc., which I loved. So, I mean, that might be a possibility down the road, too.
Yeah, I don't think Money Inc. gets enough love when people talk about some of the best tag teams, especially of this era. They were two established heels who were singles competitors who both were having great careers. IRS maybe not as much as DiBiase, but when you put them together, they were such a hateable team. Like, who didn't hate the tax man and the guy who is so rich that he probably doesn't have to pay taxes? He has found a loophole where he barely has to pay anything. And they team up together to go against all the powers of good. When your fucking wrestling name is Erwin R. Shyster, you are built to be hated. You're wrestling in suspenders and a tie already. We already hate you. You team up with the self-proclaimed $1 Million Man making his spring residence in Palm Springs, California. I love them as a tag team. I think we need to explore that a little bit further down the road.
I 100% agree. I think they're very underrated. They're not celebrated enough as a tag team, especially in this era. So I'm 100% on board with with that particular thought process. The other thing too is it's interesting how a fresh coat of paint, so to speak, can really revive a particular performer. You have to remember that IRS Mike Rotunda was at WrestleMania 1 as part of the US Express, and now here he is at WrestleMania 8, or in 1992. It's really interesting to see how his career kind of, I don't want to say reignited, because he had been part of the Varsity Club and WCW and this and that, but I think
I
this
wouldn't say
IRS
reignited.
gimmick really. Pardon?
He reinvented himself. I wouldn't say he rejuvenized himself. He reinvented himself into a whole completely different gimmick, which worked for him. We've seen the fails in the past with like Demolition Smash turning into the Repo Man, or everybody's fucking favorite Chavo Guerrero becoming Kerwin White. We've seen the horrible ones. This is one of the examples of a great one.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. 100%.
All right, well, shall we move on there, pal?
Yes, sir. What's
Up
the next match on the card?
Up next, we had the match of the night, in my opinion. A wonderful 8-man tag team match with the Big Boss Man, Virgil, Sergeant Slaughter, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan teaming up against the Nasty Boys, Jerry Saggs and Brian Knobbs, everybody's favorite tag team around here, the Repo Man, and, though I can't wait for the impression because it's coming, the Mountie.
I'm the Mountie. Yeah. The next match on the card, speaking of IRS, is Erwin R. Shyster going one-on-one with Owen Hart.
Okay. I like the match on paper. It's two technical wrestlers who are able to do a lot of cool things in the ring. I just want to know, is there a storyline, or are we just kind of throwing this together?
Well, I think that you and I have talked about this a couple of times in this era, be it the later 80s or early 90s. We'd always get a couple of matches on these big cards, especially WrestleMania, that didn't really have much of a build. It was just getting people on the card. And again, it's kind of like the ebbs and flows of the card. So we're trying to bring the audience down a little bit now from the three large matches that we had just seen. You had the hot open with Shawn, then of course you had the LOD, and then you have the Undertaker versus DiBiase, which is a big marquee match. So now you want to get people back grounded again before we bring them back up on the ride. So I just thought that this would be a really nice little kind of palate cleanser. We have Owen Hart making waves in the singles division after a victory over Martel at Survivor Series and a short-lived run with the New Foundation. Owen is ready to stake his claim. So it's a fast-paced match with Owen showcasing his aerial skills. IRS attempts to ground the high-flying Owen with a side suplex that is countered into a crossbody. After a near fall, Owen rockets off the ropes and hits a spinning heel kick and rapidly climbs to the top rope for a missile drop kick for the pin. Your winner, Owen Hart.
You couldn't resist saying Owen rockets off the top rope, could you?
I thought it'd be nice.
You're really proud of that one. See, here's the thing. I like this, but I think I would have had IRS go over only because he's the more established character at this point that they're clearly trying to get a little more behind, whereas Owen, it really doesn't hurt him to lose because he hasn't really established himself, even in our world. Yes, he beat Martel. Yes, he was part of the New Foundation. But in all honesty, Jay, did anybody care about the New Foundation? And when they split up and Owen went solo, did anybody really care at that point? I love Owen Hart. You know this. You know I'm a huge Owen fan. I just think that this was a mistake in the booking, personally. I would have had IRS go over. Then you can have him and DiBiase team up down the road. Or, actually, now as I'm saying that, with both DiBiase and IRS losing, I guess you could have them kind of try as a tag match to try and avenge. I don't know. I still stand by the fact that I think Owen should have lost. And if you want to heat him up, you have Superstars, you have Wrestling Challenge, you have Saturday night's main event. Give him matches start with some enhancement talent, move our way up to a Virgil, move our way up to a Skinner like it was originally on this card, and then have him keep going until we get to perhaps the 1993 SummerSlam Survivor Series, where we all know what goes on there.
Yeah, no, I get your point, and I can't necessarily argue with it. My only thinking is because it's our multiverse that we're creating, that why not give Owen the win and heat him up now? Why wait until, 93? I think that it's an opportunity to really give Owen the rub. And again, I really don't think it hurts IRS much. I mean, his character is already established at this point, and he's the type of heel that I think can lose consistently, and it doesn't hurt him much. I mean, because he's going to be hated and regarded as a villain no matter what. But your point is taken. I mean, it could go either way on this. I just chose to give Owen the rub on this night.
Your booking, my friend, is what you want to do. I'm not mad at it. I just would have gone the other way.
That's fair.
Yeah. Are you ready for next
Yes,
one?
sir. Yep.
Well, next up, we had Randy Macho Man Savage challenging the Nature Boy Ric Flair for the WWF Championship. Now, I'm just going to say this from the get-go. You know how I feel. The title should have gone on last, so I want to know where we are on this.
The next match on the card is for the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championships. It is your champions, the Nasty Boys, going up against the Natural Disasters.
Okay, this is clearly just going to be a brawl, a hard-hitting fight, because not any of these four men are really known for their technical wrestling. Not saying they can't do it, they just weren't doing it.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's going to be a pure sixer for sure. So after the Disasters made the save for LOD, the Nasties now have incentive to accept the challenge. Quake and Typhoon are turned face after Jimmy Hart sides with the Nasties. At WrestleMania, the match is an expose and big man offense. Both Quake and Typhoon exchange frequent tags and hit power spot after power spot on Sags. The finish comes as a worn down Sags is crawling for the corner to tag Knobs. Typhoon cuts him off. Jimmy Hart jumps up on the apron to distract Typhoon. Knobs enters the ring, slapping his hands together to signal a tag to the attention-drawn referee, who is now entangled with the Mouth of the South. Sags rolls out of the ring and throws the megaphone to Knobs, who catches it and nails Typhoon. Knobs goes for the cover, but in a cruel irony is nailed in the back by the megaphone as well by a now ever-present Earthquake. Earthquake hits the Earthquake Splash, and an unencumbered referee makes the count. Your winners, the Natural Disasters. Following the pin, the referee realizes he never saw the tag take place between Knobs and Sags. The illegal man was pinned, and the victory is overturned. Still, your World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, the Nasty Boys.
I love this. I love that you tease them losing it. It seems like the faces have won. Everybody's ready to go home. Then we get that whole, oh wait, I'm a stupid referee. I fucked up. Let's figure this one out. Let's look at the tiny little Tron potentially for a replay. Wonderful. And the fact that somehow you and I are giving the Nasty Boys such a long tag team title run, when they eventually lose it in 25 years, it's going to be incredible.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, I toyed with the idea of having the Disasters go over here, but I just thought it was a nice little fake out to have them potentially win it and then go ahead and get the call overturned. So, I mean, it also prolongs the story. You can go back and do rematches. I don't know how long this particular angle will go on for, but I also think that there was more to the story because of the allegiance with Jimmy Hart. You can't necessarily just blow this off in one match. I like the idea of continuing it on, and then of course them being the Natural Disasters, eventually getting their hands on Jimmy Hart as well, which I think kind of plays into some more long-term booking here.
Yeah, you know me. If the Nasty Boys win, I'm happy. You put the Nasty Boys over, you put Raven over, you put Mr. Perfect over, you put Doink the Clown when he was a heel over. God damn, you got money, kid.
100% license to print money. They're hanging off the rafters.
Well, are you ready to move on to the next one now? Because we got a fun match on the original card.
Yes, sir.
Well, originally we had the Native American, as he was called, Tatanka, going one-on-one against Rick the Model Martel. I really, really hope, but I'm not always counting for Rick Martel on every card. But if you put him on, I'm happy. If you didn't, I understand.
Next match on the card is the Native American Tatanka going one-on-one with Skinner.
You motherfucker. I don't even know what to say to you right now. Yeah, choose Skinner over Martel. And I mean, okay. I kind of see where you're going with this, though, because Tatanka is new. He's undefeated at the time. Skinner makes sense, I guess, to win. I don't know. I didn't like the Skinner gimmick, but I didn't hate the Skinner gimmick. I don't think they went anywhere with it where they should have. So at this point, he was kind of one step above a jobber. So yeah, if this is where you're going with it, I completely understand.
Yeah, it's a relative squash match. I mean, Skinner gets in some offense early, but is cut off by Tatanka, who hits a series of clotheslines, an atomic drop, and a second rope tomahawk chop for the pin. Your winner, Tatanka. And I mean, to your point, I don't necessarily think that we can't do something with Skinner down the line in our multiverse. But in this particular event, I just kind of felt like the combination of Tatanka and Skinner kind of on paper looked a little more attractive to me than Martel and Tatanka.
So you're trying to tell me that you find chewing tobacco coming out of a greasy man's mouth more attractive than a model?
I think that the type of gimmicks that these two guys were portraying kind of fit better in a one-on-one match than the model versus the Native American.
Yeah. Oh, we are potentially going to get in a lot of trouble for some comments if we keep going. So yeah. Uh, okay.
No, I didn't mean it in a derisive
No, no,
way. I
no.
mean, he was called the
I
Native American Tatanka. I mean,
I'm
that's what
well,
he. I mean,
I'm well aware of that, but I feel like if we started going like you know, I don't even want to go where I was potentially going to go because it's going to get me canceled. So let's just keep going, shall
well,
we?
if it's better to call him the First Nations Tatanka, we can call him that. I certainly didn't mean any
Oh
disrespect to
no, no, no,
anybody.
no, no, no. Nothing that I was thinking had anything to do with Tatanka per se, or what we were referring to him as. It was just I went real woke to a degree, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
All
Well,
right. Well,
with that being said, let's move on to the next one.
which originally was for the WWF Tag Team Championship, with the Natural Disasters defeating and winning the Tag Team Championship. Sorry, not winning because it was a countout from Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase and IRS. We have seen all four of these men so far. So where are we going?
Next match on the card is for the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Championship, and it is your champion, Roddy Piper, defending against Bret Hitman Hart.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the few matches on this card that I 100% would have kept because it was just great.
Yeah, and I mean, it really doesn't change much. I mean, after Piper wins the Intercontinental Championship at Saturday night's main event, Bret Hart was waiting in the wings. Having been robbed of the title at Royal Rumble, Hart was entitled to a crack at the championship. The build to the match is much the same as in Cannon, and in Indianapolis, the classic match 2 remains the same. I didn't have the heart to change it. We talked about this last week. It's an unsung hero in WrestleMania history, one of the better Intercontinental Championship matches, in my humble opinion, that never gets talked about. So for those purposes, I kept it the same.
See, that's I completely no. First of all, let me just say, yeah, I get it. It was a great match. It was a showcase for Bret. It was Piper putting over the newer star, and not a lot of people really got clean victories over Roddy Piper in his career. I don't think a lot of people realize that in one-on-one competition, Piper barely lost, let alone clean. So this is huge. But going back to what you were saying about it being an unsung hero match of WrestleMania, especially an Intercontinental Championship match, up to this point, there were not many Intercontinental Championship matches on any pay-per-view that disappointed. You look at Mania, you had the first one with Greg Valentine and Junkyard Dog, which it was a decent match for what it was. It was fine. You look at 2 with Savage and Steel. Was that a great technical bout? No, but it told a great story. Then you go to the absolute classic that everybody goes back to at WrestleMania 3 with Savage and Steamboat, which I I can't say a bad word about. The storyline in it was perfect. The match was damn near perfect. The fucking outcome of the surprise pin out of nowhere was great. You look at 4, I'm drawing a blank here. That was what? Warrior and, or was it Honky? Was it Honky and Beefcake at 4? Is that what it was? Do you remember?
I honestly don't remember. 4 is
So
a bit of a blur to me because of that tournament. It's hard to remember exactly what was a tournament match and what was a singles match for me.
I'm gonna think it was Honky and Beefcake, which I don't think really did anything for me because neither one of us can remember. 5 was Warrior and Rude, which was surprisingly great, with Rude going over with that Bobby Heenan interference. 6, we had the title for title, which, I mean, let's be real, it was probably one of Warrior's best matches, which isn't saying much. 7, you had what, Perfect and Kerry Von Erich, or was it Perfect and Boss Man? Which, again, not a bad match because Kurt Hennig could wrestle a broomstick and have a good match. Then you go to this one, another great one. So yeah, Intercontinental Championship matches at WrestleMania usually have a pretty good reputation of going to go out there and steal the show. You look recently, what was it, 3 years ago, 4 years ago with Miz, Seth Rollins, and Finn Balor? One of the best shows on the card.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, going back to 7, even like Hennig and Bossman was a good match. And I mean, nobody can take away from the fact that Bossman was a great wrestler, especially when he trimmed down. He had lost a significant amount of weight. He never looked better in my eyes in terms of his initial run until we got into his face aspect of his run where he had lost a lot of weight. He looked good. He was moving fast. Bossman was a great worker.
Oh, you want to talk somebody who hit the ropes better than pretty much anybody ever? You got to talk about the Big Boss Man. Like, they legit looked like they were going to snap. He hit them so hard every single time. You believed that man was getting shot as hard as he could into them.
Yeah, and you know what I loved was that one move that he did where he would have somebody would be like leaning against the bottom rope with their, or rather the second rope with their neck and their arms, and he would shoot off the ropes and slide underneath the ring and then do that uppercut on the outside. Oh, I love that move.
Oh yeah, just it was a total heel move that he kept going when he was a babyface. But yeah, it was fucking perfect. Like, you think he's gonna crush the guy by running out, jumping on top of him, but no, he just slides underneath and just hits him.
Yeah,
That's all he needs to do. He's
awesome.
a cop. He's a cop. He's just gonna smack you around if he needs to.
Yeah,
Shout out to the boys in blue.
100%, and he's one of those guys that, again, he's in the Hall of Fame, and yes, he's celebrated, but somebody that doesn't get enough love in my eyes is Ray Traylor, the Big Boss Man, and I actually adored his run in the Attitude Era as well.
Oh yeah, his Attitude Era one, easy for me to say. His Attitude Era run was great until he started teaming with Bull Buchanan, and then we saw that it was going to be near the end of his career. It was what it was by that point. But even his WCW runs, like, they were pretty good. Like, he had some good matches with Vader. It was an interesting time because he was going by what? The Guardian Angel, Big Bubba Rogers, the Boss, also just Ray Traylor. Like, he was another one of those kind of Brutus Beefcake type things where it seemed every couple of months he was a new name.
That's very true.
And I think that's why a lot of his WCW career kind of gets forgotten because he had so many different gimmicks.
Well, he was a member of the NWO as well for a time.
So was Mike Rotunda. Does anybody really remember that?
Michael S. Wall Street, I think it was.
No. At this point, it was VK Wall Street.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, VK Wall Street. And then it became Michael Wall Street afterwards. That's right.
Yeah, it was the shot at Vincent Kennedy McMahon, and then they moved on because they were taking shots for no reason at that point.
Yes.
All right, well, you ready to move on after we sidebar about the lovely Ray Traylor?
You bet your bottom dollar, pal.
Well, up next was the barn burner between Owen Hart and Skinner. Again, this one's not there. So I'm now curious if you're going where I think you're going or if we're throwing something else in there. So lay it on me, big man.
Next match on the card is Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Texas Tornado going up against the Repo Man and the Mountie.
What the actual fuck is this? Oh, talk about teams just being thrown together. Oh, Jesus. I mean, I get why you did it because, ebbs and flows, but do they all need to be on this card? I don't think that WrestleMania needed Repo Man or Jim Duggan at this point, but yeah. Do it. Let's go.
Well, again, going back to what we said at the top of the show, I do feel like, in a way, this is a bit of a love letter to the Federation years. And so for that reason, I wanted to get some of these guys on the card. I mean, this would be the last time we'd see Hacksaw Jim Duggan at WrestleMania, if I'm not mistaken. He wasn't on 9, so I think this was his last one. Texas Tornado, deserved a spot. I feel like Repo Man had been in the company for a long time, the Mountie as well. So I just think that it makes sense to put these guys together, get some of these guys on the card, get them a WrestleMania payday, and let them bask in the glory of WrestleMania potentially for the last time. So
I'm going to stop you for 1 second there. This was not Jim Duggan's last appearance, because he did make a comeback in the 2000s that a lot of people forget about. And he was in some battle royals at the later WrestleManias in the 20s.
that's true. But I mean, on the main card in a marquee spot, this would be his last moment in the sun.
Is this really a marquee spot, Jay, in a throwaway tag match against the Repo Man and the Mountie? I mean, I guess okay, so I just want to break this down a little bit. You have Jim Duggan, who is not a technical wrestler. He is known as a brawler, a singles brawler at that. I don't think I've ever seen Duggan hit a technical move other than a body slam. You have the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, who is a fucking legend especially in Texas. He's a former Intercontinental Champion. By this point, like to quote you, the rose was off the bloom, or the bloom was off the rose, whatever we say there. Then you got Repo Man and Mountie. Now, they're both experienced tag team wrestlers. Repo Man spending almost all of his career in the WWF as half of Demolition, whereas the Mountie teamed with his brother, Raymond Rougeau, for years. So I could see the two of them working as a cohesive unit. The other two are the ones that I have the trouble with. I know I'm rambling a lot about this, so of all matches to talk about, but let's see what you got.
No, that's completely fine. And I get why you kind of are at a bit of a loss here. But yeah, again, I mean, we've talked about this a couple of times throughout the course of our booking history, that we have to book within the parameters of the time frame, what was going on at the time. And again, we just talked about it a couple of matches ago. You always got a couple of matches on these earlier WrestleManias where there was really no storyline. It was just a matter of getting people on the card, breaking up the flow of the card. So I feel like this match fits in with that particular framework. So it's a quick match, quick tag team encounter to help break up the flow of the card. Repo and Tornado exchange fists. Tornado hits a drop kick and tags Duggan. Duggan nails a shoulder block that sends Repo into the ropes. The Mountie gets the blind tag. Meanwhile, Duggan nails Repo with a lumbering clothesline and goes for the cover. The Mountie breaks it up. Now the legal man, the Mountie, slugs Duggan and rakes the eyes. A vision-impaired Duggan returns the hard right hand and manages to tag Tornado. Duggan has the referee's attention distracted, complaining of the eye rake as Repo and the Mountie double-team Tornado. The Tornado is nailed with a spike pile driver, and the Mountie covers for an oblivious official to make the count. Your winners, the Repo Man and the Mountie, as Jimmy Hart celebrates with his team as they head back to the dressing room.
Did Jimmy Hart manage the Repo Man as well, or was it just the Mountie?
I don't think he did. I think the Repo Man was a solo act at this point. I don't think he had a manager.
I'm wondering if he did, if that career would have lasted a little bit longer, if the Lone Ranger mask would have kept on for a little bit longer. But what you want to talk about, one of the worst goddamn gimmicks in wrestling history, and it's the Repo Man. We talked about it earlier, in like a few months ago, with his feud with Randy Savage, where he just repossessed his hat, is what it was over. Like, this gimmick was fucking doomed from the get-go.
It was not great, but I mean, the performer that was behind it, I guess, gave it some legs. He was around for a few years there. I think into 94, he might have still been doing it. So, I mean, a credit to him, because anybody else, it would have fizzled out probably within weeks. So I think it had been put on someone else, it would have never made it as far as it did.
It's such a slightly memorable gimmick, though, that it was brought back in 2001 at the Gimmick Battle Royale. Why did I call it that? The Battle Royal at 17. And he kind of got a decent pop from the crowd.
Yeah, no, he did, for sure. I mean, people remembered the gimmick, without question.
It's funny to think that was 9 years after this. So we're going into what, WrestleMania 38? That would be if we had a gimmick battle royal from people from WrestleMania 29, which is it would be Jack Swagger's Real American coming out. It would be Fandango. It would be, I can't even remember, Ryback. Like, that would be our gimmick battle royal in 2022.
Yeah, no, exactly. It would be. You get like the El Mat or the El Matadors or whatever. Los Matadores, sorry. Maybe you'd get what was the mascot's name again?
El Torito.
Yeah, El Torito would be in there for sure.
You'd probably have Hornswoggle. You'd probably have the Great Khali, Ranjin Singh, because there would have to be a manager of some sort in there, as there was with Jim Cornette. It would just be Mike Adamle would probably be there just for the horribleness that he was.
Maybe some Vladimir Kozlov.
I truly
think
that should be a new rule of ours from now on, is every goddamn Mania we try to incorporate a gimmick battle royal of 10 years prior to the year.
I don't know about every Mania, but we can certainly discuss.
It's a fun idea, but yes, it would get really hard to do. I get that, but I can promise you that at some point this year, a gimmick battle royal will make it onto a card.
That sounds good to me, pal.
All right, well, moving on. In the original card, we're at the main event. We're at Hulk Hogan going one-on-one with Sid Justice, which, goddamn, you want to talk horrible WrestleMania main events, not only the in-ring work, but all the mistimed cues with Papa Shango and the Ultimate Warrior returning. It was just a mess. So I'm going to just let you talk about what you have next.
Well, I still have a handful of matches on this card, so I'm going to maybe, if you want, just take it from here. After this,
and then I'll just keep interrupting when I need to.
Sounds good to me. So the next match on the card is Sid Justice versus Sergeant Slaughter.
Okay, so why? I guess is the real thing I have to say here. Sid was kind of on the cusp. He was being heated up. He'd only been with the company at this point for what? Maybe 6 months? Like, when did he debut? I think in October, November, somewhere around there.
He was a referee for SummerSlam 91, was he not?
Was that his first appearance, or had he already been a wrestler in the company at that point?
I want to say he was probably around for a little less than a year at this point. He probably came in, late spring of 1991.
Okay, and Sergeant Slaughter at this point isn't really a name draw anymore. Like, I'm just gonna say it. Even at WrestleMania VII 91, when he was main eventing, he wasn't a draw. People were going to see Hulk Hogan, and that was the only reason they were going to see. I'm curious to see what you're doing here. If it's just going to be Sid squashing old Sarge, or if Sarge is actually going to give him a match.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I think that people really underplay how hot Slaughter was in the 80s, and maybe not so much in the early 90s, but he had that G.I. Joe contract. He had an action figure named after him by G.I. Joe. He was in the early 80s, before WrestleMania was a thing. It was neck and neck to see who the most popular superstar in WWF was in Sergeant Slaughter. So I think although he might be at the back nine of his career at this point, people really have to keep in mind that Slaughter is still a huge name.
I don't think that anybody's arguing the fact that 10 years prior to this, 8 to 10 years prior to this, Slaughter was huge. Yeah, we all grew up watching G.I. Joe. I remember only wanting to watch the episodes with Sergeant Slaughter on it. Slaughter was huge in the AWA. Slaughter was huge in the WWF. You look at the fucking boot camp matches he had with Pat Patterson. You want to see hardcore wrestling before hardcore wrestling was a thing. Go out of your way. Find one of those matches. Potentially have a puke bucket for yourself, because there is so much blood. It is disgusting. It looks like they just Lord of the Flies each other and were just murdering. But god damn it, Brutal in this point was great. So yes, I am not downplaying the fact that Sergeant Slaughter was once a huge draw and a huge name, but at this point, I don't see putting him on the card. But all right, do what you got to do, man.
No, I get what you're saying. I do agree with that, but I think for the purposes of his legacy and what he has meant in the past. I think that he's still a name, and he's still someone that that people look to as a star. So Sid Justice and Randy Savage would have a match to determine the number one contender. Jack Tunney had stripped DiBiase's claims to the position after what he had done to Paul Bearer. The Undertaker obviously would vow revenge on DiBiase and no longer held the championship in his immediate interests. Savage would actually win the match clean. After the match, a seemingly psycho Sid is enraged and takes his aggressions out on Slaughter, who is en route to the ring for the next match on Superstars. Once the dust settles, Slaughter challenges Sid to a match at WrestleMania. Sid accepts, and we march to Indianapolis with the two exchanging promos on one another. The match is hard-hitting. Slaughter hits some hard right hands, a clothesline, and kicks Sid in the face. Slaughter senses victory early, landing a series of elbow drops and is poised to lock on the Cobra Clutch. As Slaughter attempts the maneuver, Sid nails Slaughter in the breadbasket with a deep boot. He then takes control with a few clubbing blows of his own. He sends Slaughter sailing into the ring post head first, followed by a chokeslam and a powerbomb for the victory. Your winner, Sid Justice.
I mean, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but yeah, Sid had to win that match. Fuck, I hate Sid. You know how much I hate Sid. I'll never understand him being in such a main event capacity in every federation he went to, other than the fact that he was, 6'8", bleach blonde, curly mullet. All right, he had the look, but he didn't have the talent. I got nothing else to say about this match.
Fair enough. I know how you feel about Sid, so I didn't feel like he could be left off the card based on the position that he was in. I mean, he was vying for number one contendership a couple of weeks earlier. I feel like you kind of need to have someone of that stature on the card. So,
yeah, no. I trust me. Like I say, I get it. I 100% understand why he's on this card because of where he was in the company at this point. I just don't understand why companies were putting him in this spot. He was hurting people. He was not a good worker. He was just a body. He was the warlord of this generation, even though the warlord, I think, was still around at this point. But yeah, I'm ready to go on to the next one if you are.
Yes, sir. The next match on the card is for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. It is Rick Nature Boy Flair, your champion, going up against Randy Macho Man Savage.
Fucking boo. This is not... Oh, you didn't put the title on last, Jay. You didn't put the title on last, and I am not pleased about this.
That's fine. I know you wouldn't be. So, following that match with Sid, Savage is now the number one contender. The rest of the build is largely the same as in canon. Once Flair determines who his challenger will be, the same events with Elizabeth unfold. At WrestleMania, the matches work the same, but the finish comes as Savage is working over a bloody Flair. Savage attempts a scoop slam, seemingly to set up for the elbow. Savage's leg gives out as Flair had been working it over for much of the contest. As Randy's leg gives way, Flair rolls up Savage into a small package and gets the pin. Your winner and still World Wrestling Federation champion, Ric Flair. After the match, Flair kisses Elizabeth. Elizabeth slaps the shit out of Flair as Savage manages to nail Perfect, who's on the apron. Perfect and Flair cower backstage as Liz is crying, and she's attempting to aid Randy, who is now collapsed in the ring. World Wrestling Federation officials help Randy back to his feet as a shaken Liz looks on.
Okay, so this is an interesting way to do this because so we didn't have the whole Photoshop thing leading up to this, correct? We
did. We did.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah.
So I like where you went here with obviously Elizabeth getting involved and slapping Ric Flair. I like that Flair retained. The only thing that I'm curious about here is because, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ric Flair would go on down the road to beat Randy Savage to win back the title, correct?
Yes.
So obviously this storyline is still going on. The next pay-per-view, per se, is SummerSlam, but I know we weren't living in an era where title changes only happened at pay-per-views. So I'm curious if this is going to keep going for a long time. I know it's completely up to us. Or if Flair's just going to hold the title long enough to potentially still drop it to Brett down the line. This leaves a lot of things questionable, which is kind of fun, I got to say.
Yeah, I think that in my mind, Flair winning the title at Rumble 92 and then dropping it at WrestleMania 8 was a little fast. I feel like he should have held on to it for a while longer. I mean, in my mind, for the better part of the year. It would have kind of kept Flair in the picture as well. I mean, if you look at in canon what happened at SummerSlam 92, Flair was just there at ringside during the match. He didn't even have a match at SummerSlam 92. So I feel like if you have a hot property like Ric Flair at this point, you put the title on him. Why not keep it? The other thing, too, for me is that as much as I know it bothers you the title didn't go on last, I think that in a way this kind of cushions that now because the heel went over. It kind of makes sense that it didn't go on last.
I understand your point. I still disagree.
Well, that is very fair, my friend. So I am ready to move on to the next if you are.
Well, I'm going to assume we're going into our main event right now. So, yeah, lead us there, sweetheart.
The next match on the card is Rick the Model Martel going up against the Big Boss Man.
What a fucking main event this is. This puts butts in seats in any stadium all around the world.
Indeed it does. Well, again, this is a nice palate cleanser. Martel had his working boots on after an opening flurry of offense on the part of the Boss Man, including some stiff uppercuts and a clothesline and even a scoop slam. Martel gains the upper hand after Boss Man misses an attempted elbow drop. The model puts the boots to Cobb County's finest. After a swinging neck breaker, Martel is poised to apply the Boston Crab when Boss Man kicks out. Martel is then driven into the mat with a Boss Man slam, and your winner is the Big Boss Man.
Yep, makes sense. I'm totally fine with this. You got them both on the card. I appreciate Rick Martel being there. I'd rather see him going up against the Big Boss Man than Tatanka. I feel like it would be a better match. It's two more established characters, two more established wrestlers. So yeah, I'm fine with this.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Now we come to the point in the program and into the card where we are going to attempt to pay off all this hard work we have been doing for the last several months. And Tyrone, I don't know where you're going to sit with this, so just let me get through it. And then after I'm finished, you can tell me how you feel. I put a lot of thought into this, and I think I've come up with a pretty good conclusion. But let's just see how we land at the end of the booking of the match in the program. How's that sound?
I am going to mute myself completely until you tell me you are done, and then I will give my opinion.
Sounds good, my friends. So, following the events of the Royal Rumble, Jack Tunney finally takes action in banning the snake from ringside. Furthermore, he assigns a professional snake handler to be positioned at ringside for all of Roberts' matches. After the Saturday night's main event encounter, the match is made official. In the weeks leading to Indianapolis, Jake is rarely seen. However, actions speak louder than words. On an episode of Superstars, Beefcake is found laid out in a dressing room. A face-down Beefcake has lashes on his exposed back with a snakeskin belt left a few feet from the barber's head. A message has again been sent. Hogan has been on a quest to find Roberts before the big-time encounter. The final stop before the Hoosier Dome finds Hogan in the ring calling out Jake for a final face-to-face encounter. The arena reverberates with the sound of the heel Trust Me theme. No Roberts in sight. A frustrated Hogan takes his leave only to turn his head back to the ring and discover a sack made out of Hulkamania t-shirts placed in the far corner of the ring. Hogan beelines it back to the ring with the snake handler in tow, who is present in case of a Roberts sighting. The handler carefully opens the bag to discover a dead snake inside. Would Jake Roberts really kill his own snake to send a message? At WrestleMania, Jake is out first. The snake handler is at ringside and has inspected the ringside area. Hogan emerges but forgoes his traditional fanfare. His purposeful walk to the ring, tearing off his shirt, never taking his eyes off Jake, has Jake rattled to a degree. The match starts with Hogan hitting hard right hands. Jake takes a powder. He plays mind games with Hogan, crawling under the ring. Hogan smirking and anticipating where Jake will emerge from leads him to the outside. Jake then fakes out Hogan and crawls back out from where he entered. He swings Hogan around but is nailed by another hard right hand. Hogan rolls Roberts back into the ring. He works him over. Jake is busted open. Hogan scoops a weekend Roberts up to be slammed, but Jake manages to elbow Hogan in the jaw while in position to be scoop slammed. Hogan drops Jake. Jake executes a drop toe hold. He then nails a sinister kick to the liver, followed by a knee drop and elbow drops to the area. Jake then pulls Hogan up by the head and hits a short arm clothesline. Jake then attempts a DDT, which is countered, sending Roberts into the referee, knocking the official outside. Roberts collects himself, kicks Hogan in the groin, and nails a DDT. With no referee in sight, Jake exits the ring. Smiling and with a lifeless Hogan seemingly in the palm of his hand, Jake is very pleased with himself. A lifeless Hogan is still out. Roberts, still on the outside, then goes from jubilant to maniacal. He throws the snake handler into the timekeeper's table. Jake lifts the ring steps to reveal that a moving bag and handler's glove has been hidden underneath. Roberts clutches the bag and chuckles psychotically as he rolls back in the ring. Jake puts on the glove and opens the bag to reveal the Cobra, alive and well. Jake then moves towards Hogan, who is now dazed but clearing the cobwebs. The Cobra attempts to bite Hogan, but its teeth get caught in the canvas. As Jake attempts to pry the snake loose, a stunned yet furious Hogan nails Jake with a hard right hand. The handler, who has gained his bearings at this point, quickly reaches into the ring and collects the snake, bags it, and runs backstage with the sack in hand. Hogan hulks up, nailing Jake with a few right hands, a low blow of his own, and a big boot. Hogan is poised to deliver the leg drop, but stops short. That's not good enough for Jake. The referee is starting to recover at this point, but is still dazed. Hogan slides out of the ring. He grabs a chair and returns to find Roberts getting to his feet using the ropes for assistance. Jake turns and walks into a vicious chair shot to the head. Hogan slides the chair out of the ring. He lands 2 leg drops, and now the referee counts a slow, dramatic 3 for the conclusion. Your winner, Hulk Hogan. And that is our main event of WrestleMania 8.
Oh, where do I start with this? First of all, PETA is going to be right up your ass for a dead snake. That's just disgusting. I can't believe that would happen. Okay, so there are aspects of this that I like and aspects of this that I don't like, which I'm pretty sure you figured was going to happen. I really hate the idea of a snake handler being there. I understand why it was done, especially in '92. I just think it's really, really stupid and cheesy. I also hate the finish. I'm not going to lie. I thought for sure you were going to put Jake over just to get rid of Hogan for a bit. Because at this point, I don't know if we're keeping Hogan in the picture. I don't know if he's fucking off to film Thunder in Paradise or whatever it was that he was doing at this point. But he was gone for a good chunk of time after this. I would have probably had Jake go over. I get what you did. You kind of turned Hogan heel. You had him use the chair a couple times. You had him you had him use the chair. You had him hit a couple of leg drops. It's almost shades of the Hollywood Hogan that we would see 4 or 5 years later. I don't know if I like this at all. I'm trying to figure this out. I know it took you a while to book it, so I'm really not trying to shit on it because this is hard work. This is months in advance. This is us planting tons of seeds and getting there. I'm really shocked you didn't put Jake over. I don't know if you want to explain that or not.
I don't think that you could. I think at this point, I think you've seen how much has been going on. If you go back and look at our bookings starting at Survivor Series 91, putting this match together, planting those seeds, all the dastardly things that Jake had done to Hogan, costing the title, all these various things, attacking Beefcake, all of these various events that have taken place. Jake has had the upper hand on Hogan for months. And I just don't feel like in the parameters of 1992 WWF, as much as I would have loved to have had Jake go over, I just can't see that continuing on. I mean, I would have liked to have potentially seen it, but at the same time, I just feel like Hogan had to win here because of the way we had structured the story.
I see what you're saying, but I don't know where you go with Jake after this. I don't know if Jake is staying with the company because he would leave relatively shortly after this. He would end up in WCW sometime after. I don't I don't know where you go with Jake. Like, are we done with Jake? Are we done with this storyline? Are we keeping him in the company for a bit? Is Hogan disappearing? Like, I don't know what we're doing with either of these two, which is where I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I mean, we have to go by what actually happened in real life. And at this point, this was Jake's last match in the Federation until 1996. So Jake's gone. To me, I feel like this program ultimately would be the swan song for both men in a way. I mean, this would be the last time we would see Hogan booked in a really big time program. I mean, yes, you had what happened at 9, but that really didn't mean a whole lot. I mean, to me anyways, I mean, it was a bit of a flop, that title run, and it certainly wasn't something that was long-term booking. As for Jake, you know, he would be gone, be in WCW for a short period, and then he'd be in Mexico and things of that nature, and reemerge there at Royal Rumble 96. So I feel like we've blown off this story. Hogan's got his revenge. We'll see when Hogan pops up. I mean, he wasn't on the outs with the WWF at this point. So if we decide we want to bring him back in 92 for something, maybe SummerSlam, maybe Survivor Series, what have you, that's certainly a possibility. And we'll get to that as we book along our multiverse. But for me, I feel like this was the right way to blow it off. In terms of your thinking that Hogan was heel-like in this, I mean, Hogan hit Andre with a chair at WrestleMania 4. That's how there was a disqualification in their match at the tournament. So there is precedent for Hogan, you know, using a foreign object from time to time. And you have to also remember that this had become so personal that the fact that Hogan was a little bit more calculated in terms of the low blow. I mean, what would you do if a guy tried to bite you with a snake in the middle of the ring? I feel like the low blow was warranted. The chair shot was warranted. All of it made sense. It keeps Hogan whole as a face. And then you go on to bigger and better things maybe down the line for Hogan in the Federation. Maybe you don't. But again, as a swan song to the Federation years, to that golden era from the Rock and Wrestling Connection, I can't think of a better match in terms of heel versus face, pure evil versus pure Hulkamania in all its glory. I think that this is the way you cap that particular era, in my mind.
So, just to go back to what you said about him using the chair on Andre, it's been said many times by a lot of different heel managers, especially a Bobby Heenan, and even modern day times. Hogan pretty much worked as a heel a lot of the time. He had a lot of heel attributes like breaking the back. Just he was a rule breaker. Like, he didn't always follow the rules, but he always got cheered by the fans. In 92, the fans weren't really cheering him as much. So what's the crowd reaction with this one? Is the crowd happy with the outcome? Are they still cheering Hogan? Is it a kind of 50-50 split? I'm assuming we don't have the Warrior or Shango involved here. Did the Warrior make a comeback at some point? Like, are we bringing Ultimate Warrior back? Are we keeping him on the shelf until 1996? Like, I have more questions about shit like that too.
Well, they weren't mentioned. I mean, they're not going to be part of this presentation. I didn't think that this match needed anything else. I think that, you know, not to be self-congratulatory or pat ourselves on the back, I personally think that you and I did a really good job building this match and building this angle. I'm very proud of it. And I think that we didn't need to have any other window dressing. This match didn't need to have any interference, didn't need to have any run-ins. You already had some, you know, some shenanigans with the snake and things of that nature. So I think that's enough. I think that there's enough of a story here that you don't need to bring anybody else in. As far as the Warrior and Papa Shango, I mean, Papa Shango was already there. He wasn't on this card. Warrior, I don't know. I didn't see any reason to bring him back on this card, and I wasn't going to try to squeeze him in just because he was the Warrior. So does he come back? Maybe. I mean, when he does come back, it's only for, you know, what, 6 or 7 months, and then he's gone again. So
Can I make a suggestion on that? Can we just potentially not bring Warrior back in 92? I don't think it's necessary at all.
I don't think it serves a purpose, really. I mean, I can think of 1,000 different main events or championship matches I would have rather seen at SummerSlam 92 than Warrior Savage. But I mean, we can talk about that down the line. Whoever books SummerSlam 92 will be tasked with telling the story beyond Mania. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I land on this, man. I understand that you have your reservations about it, but I think all things being equal and all things told, I think that we did a really solid job booking this particular WrestleMania. We started in November with Summer or Survivor Series rather, and we've now come full circle. And I think that a lot of the long-term booking here has paid off.
Yeah, I can't argue it. I mean, WrestleMania 8 is a tricky one to do because as stacked of a roster as 1992 was, it also kind of wasn't. There was just as much horribleness as there was for greatness. So you had a tough task ahead of you. Overall, I'd probably give your rebooking of WrestleMania 8. Okay, let me start off by saying the original WrestleMania 8, I would probably give a 3 or 4 out of 10. And that's based off of only based off of the fact that the Nasty Boys were on the card and that wonderful Brett and Piper match. This one that you did, I'll give you a 7.5 out of 10. It's better. It's not great, obviously. There couldn't be greatness with this one because of what was on the roster. You have some solid ones. Jake and Hogan, the way you've described it, I understand why you did what you did. It makes sense, especially with Jake leaving the company. I'm fine with it. The storyline that you had to build up Undertaker and Ted DiBiase, I thoroughly enjoyed. I did like Shawn versus Tito just because it's kind of a coming out party for Shawn. Really didn't care about the LOD and the Beverly Brothers as much as I love the Beverly Brothers. I think that one could have been scrapped. I think you screwed up with IRS and Owen Hart. We already went over that. Tatanka and Skinner, it is what it is. Could have been there, could have not. Fucking hated your tag team match of Duggan and Tornado versus Repo and Mountie. Sid versus Slaughter. Again, I get why you did it. Do I ever want to see it? Not in a million years. Flair and Savage should have been the main event. Should have gone on last. We're going to agree to disagree on that one. Bossman and Martel. To me, this is WrestleMania 6 all over again for Bossman versus Akeem, where he's kind of putting that right before the main event position. So, yeah, I think that I'm justified in saying that this is a 7.5 out of 10 show. I don't think you could have gotten much higher, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I think that, we've talked about how 9 is a guilty pleasure for both of us. I think that 8's a guilty pleasure for me too. Now, having watched it back yesterday, I think maybe a little bit less so than it has been in previous years. I think maybe it's lost a little bit of its luster. I used to really enjoy going back and watching it, and I probably still will, but it's not quite as enjoyable for me to watch as it was in years past. That being said, though, I mean, I think that ultimately, with the main event being what it was, I understand your argument about, putting the championship on last, and I understand your argument about putting Jake over. But yeah, I think that the booking ends up kind of making sense, and we've reset the table, turned over the table for now. What's going to happen coming into, the summer of 1992 as well as the spring. We'll see where we go. We'll see what we come up with. And it's going to be fun because there's a lot of possibilities here. There's a lot of opportunity for fresh matchups, fresh angles. And I have a feeling that SummerSlam 92, whomever books it, is going to be dramatically different from what we got.
Absolutely it is, and that's a good thing. All right, well, should we let everybody know what's going on next week? Are we going to keep it a secret? What do you want to do, pal?
I think we should let the cat out of the bag. If you remember correctly, our listening audience and you as well, Tyrone, we had gone back at Royal Rumble season and had our dear, close, personal, longtime friend Tyler book the Royal Rumble 1993. So since he was tasked with that and did an exquisite job booking that particular event, he will be making a triumphant return to our illustrious podcast. And we will be rebooking the following year's WrestleMania. So we've given you 8 from 92. Next week, we're going back to the year 1993 with that transitional WrestleMania, WrestleMania 9. And I feel like this is going to be a fun show.
I am looking forward to it because you and I have stated from the get-go that 9 would be really hard for each of us to do because it is such a guilty pleasure. And trust me, Jay and I understand this is not a good pay-per-view. We are not making an argument for it being a solid in-ring classic, great technical matches. We are saying this is what we grew up watching. We love it because it's Jim Ross in a fucking toga. It is Bobby Heenan coming out ass first on a camel. It is Doink the Clown. It is Crush. It is that young upstart Bob Backlund going up against Razor Ramon. It is such a wonderful card for both of us until the last 5 minutes. So I am very curious to see how Tyler does this, how angry it's going to make me. He seems to think that he has done it quite its just due. I disagree, but we'll find out in a week, won't we?
We most certainly will. And then from there, we're going to be getting into some more, well, I don't want to say modern day WrestleManias, but a little bit more further towards the end of the millennium. So it's going to be interesting to see how we come out. And we are still going to be booking WrestleMania 13 this year. I do believe that there will be a WrestleMania 20 booked at some point in the next few weeks. So we have a lot of interesting WrestleManias coming up. And of course, you can always go back and check out our archives here on the Counted Out 7 page on YouTube to check out last year's offerings of WrestleMania. We had a lot of fun booking WrestleMania 18, as well as 2000 and WrestleMania 7. So we're trucking along here, folks, and we're having a great time. It is WrestleMania season. We're very excited. Tyrone, thank you so much for indulging me in my particular booking. And I know that there was maybe a little skepticism at one point when I started planting those seeds, whether or not, Jake and Hogan would be the match of the night at WrestleMania. So I appreciate you letting me see it through. And now we can move on to WrestleMania 9. And I believe after that, it'll be WrestleMania 13 on your part, sir.
Absolutely, it will be. And who knows, guys, as I've said before, Gimmick Battle Royal, 1997. I don't know. What kind of fun gimmicks did we have in 87? Would we see the adorable one, Adrian Adonis? I don't know if he was dead yet at that point, so we'll see. But on that morbid note, you can find us on social medias at the Good Friends Better Enemies podcast on Facebook, good_enemies on Twitter, good_enemies on Instagram. And as always, for everything Good Friends Better Enemies, Counted Out 7, and the wonderful Teachable Classroom podcast. I know I screw up the name every single time, and I apologize, guys.
Classroom.
Thank you very much. I don't know why those fucking 3 words are so hard for me to remember. But yes, the Classic Match Classroom with Tyler and Anthony. Go to countedout7.com. And one more final thing I just want to say. I am finally excited to be on a podcast with Tyler next week. We haven't done one together since Jay and I made our debut together on the Counted Out 7 show. So, Tyler, I hope you're fucking ready, bud.
It should be, as I like to call it, a humdinger. So, till next week, ladies and gentlemen, as we go back to that oh-so-famous transitional WrestleMania from the old guard to the new generation, for myself, for Tyrone, for Jake the Snake Roberts, for Snake Handlers, and, of course, for Sid Justice going up against Sergeant Slaughter. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast.
Bye.